Okay. All right. Welcome, everybody, to Classroom 2.0 Live session today. We're so glad that you joined us. I'm Kim Case, and I'm pleased to co-host today with Lorna Costantini. Peggy George is not with us today. She's off with the ASTE conference today, and she will be with us next week. But we have Steve Hargadon joining us today, and our special guest is Angela Maiers, and we're going to be talking about managing social networks. Each week at the same time, we gather to discuss technology tools and issues, and our broadcast consists of a 1-hour session that is recorded. The link to the full video, audio recording, and chat log is posted to our Classroom 2.0 Live site at live.classroom20.com. The topic each week is posted on the Classroom 2.0 Live site so that you can be prepared with links, ideas, and tools that you'd like to share. We post the newbie question of the week, and that is pre-announced so you can bring possible answers and solutions, and an open mic time or so that you can share some new discoveries and highlights. And at the end of the show, we hope that you'll be sharing some of those with us. Before we begin, I'd like to review some of the highlights and the features of the Illuminate session that we'll be using today, in case you're new. During today's session, we'll be asking some poll questions. To cast your vote, you're going to be using the check mark or the red X at the very top of the window in the menu. You won't click or mark anything on the whiteboard at that time. Below the participant window is a hand with a green arrow on it. If you'd like to ask a question or share something, please raise your hand by clicking on that hand, and then you'll be given the ability to use the mic and speak. Next to the hand are two emoticons, the applause symbol, and a thumbs down symbol. In the far right is a blue door. If you needed to step away from your computer, please click on the blue door and we'll know that you're not available at that time. Below those symbols is the chat window. And if you'd like to send a message to the room, you would type your message and then click the send button. To send to this room, make sure this room is visible. If you wanted to send a message to a specific person or the moderators, you would use the drop-down arrow and make your selection. Moderators are able to see all private messages, and if you copied the chat at the end of the session, everyone is able to see the private messages then at that time. Private messages are not available in the chat log or in the recording through the Illuminate system. In the bottom right is the button to activate your microphone. You would click the mic button to begin speaking. Be sure to click the mic button when you're finished speaking to deactivate your microphone. If you cannot see the chat whiteboard or you'd like to resize the different windows, you can change the session layout. Click on View in the top menu. The layout is locked, and you may need to click on the Layout Locked option to unlock this feature. You can then select the desired layout as shown on the right, or drag out the individual windows and resize them to fit your screen. In a moment, we'll be using the whiteboard tool to indicate our location on the world map. The tool that we'll be using is called the laser pointer. It's the blue wand with the little red sunburst dial at the end. On the world map now, please click on the laser pointer and then click on the world map to indicate your location. You may need to kind of drag your little sunburst dial over to the right as the sunburst kind of goes to the left a little bit. So I'm seeing lots of places in the United States, places over in Europe, places in South America. It's exciting to see all of the places throughout the world. And we welcome everybody that is joining us today to talk about managing social networks and our special guest, Angela Maiers. Now we're going to go ahead and go on to our poll questions. And again, you're going to be using your menu to answer the question. And if you look in the top, we're going to be using a green check for yes and the red X for no. And those, again, are in the top menu. You won't be clicking on the slide. And this is just an example of where you're going to click. So the first question is, do you often feel overwhelmed trying to manage all of your online social networks? If you do feel overwhelmed, because there's so much out there and so many networks, please click the green check. If you do not feel overwhelmed and you feel you have everything under control, then click the red X. If you do feel overwhelmed, click the green check. If you do not feel overwhelmed, click the red X. And I'll click the show the results in just a second. Give everybody a little bit of time to cast their votes. Looks like an overwhelming majority of people are going to have a positive result here. And it looks like 11% of the respondents here feel that they do not feel overwhelmed, and about 77% of us do feel overwhelmed managing all of our social networks. And I'm certainly in that group. Okay, the next question is, we're going to share our favorite free online management tool. And we're going to type it on the whiteboard or in the chat. And let's go to our next screen. Okay, and you're going to use the whiteboard tool by clicking on the one with the A, and then type out there what your favorite whiteboard tool your management tool is for social networking is. Mine is TweetDeck for managing Twitter, and Digo. Those are mine. I can't live without those. Also, I'm a big Clerk user. So go ahead and click the A in the whiteboard tool, which is the text tool, or you can just type in the chat. See, lots of Google readers, TweetDeck, Memes, Gmail, NetVibes, Twirl, lots of Digos, TweetDecks, Ping, I think it's pronounced Chep, Ping.fm. Lots of similar responses. iGoogle. People Browser. I haven't heard of that one, but I see that a couple times. Very interesting responses. Great responses. I'm going to take just a few more seconds to respond to this. BrightKit, FriendFeed, lots of TweetDecks, and Google Reader, pretty common. Great. Those are all wonderful things. And I'm sure Angela's going to have some more opinions on this as we get ready to talk about managing social networks and Inbox Zero. And I'm going to introduce Angela before we get to our newbie question of the week. And Angela's been an educator for 20 years, and she's currently working as an independent consultant dedicated and committed to helping educators of all levels reach their goals in literacy and literacy education. Angela's written several books, articles, and curriculum support materials. Her latest publication is Classroom Habitudes, a book about how to teach 21st century learning habits and attitudes. Angela believes that learning is a lifelong journey and that teachers need to be great learners to lead great learners. Please help me welcome Angela Maiers to today's show, and welcome, Angela.
Hi, you guys. It is great to be here. Can you all hear me okay?
We sure can, Angela. We're
all right,
so glad that you joined us today.
I see so many of my network in here, so this is the kind of support that we're talking about today.
That's awesome, and I see lots of people from Twitter and Flirt, and I'm so glad that they have joined us today. And as we get ready to talk about our managing social networks, we want to first begin with how can we keep track of these social networks and stay on top of these without going crazy?
Exactly, and I saw all the green check marks, so I know, and most of the people in here are very comfortable and very active, and if we're feeling green check marks, I just imagine what our colleagues and what our staff is feeling, and I think that this conversation can help them. When Kim asked me to talk, and she was sharing Merlin Mann's 43 folders, if you could just on your, with a green mark, how many of you are familiar with 43 folders and Merlin Mann's Inbox Zero? Thanks, Kim, for putting a link.
Sure thing. I know I wasn't. This was yours, Angela.
Okay, yes, exactly. So show me, and a lot of X's. Okay, so just a little background on Inbox Zero. Merlin Mann of the site 43 Folders, which if you haven't checked it out, oops, sound got a little worse. Can you hear me now? Sound?
Yes.
Okay. It's really a social, or is a management system for email overload and email stress to do that work in an action-based way. And so Merlin Mann created a mantra that, can you go to the next slide, Kim? Or I can do that? Okay, of delete,
sure.
Delegate, respond, respond, defer, and, oh shoot, I'm sorry. I'm working through this.
Let me go back to
I just want to, okay, all right. We'll just go to the Merlin Mann one really quick. Yes, excellent. And so his system, or his habit of working through getting your inbox to zero, involves these daily habits and actions. And when I tried to think about how this fits with the management system, that email is static and some of the tools are static, but people are human, they breathe. So I developed, or I scampered Merlin's work and developed a mantra to remind people that this is about human beings and it's about relationships. And if we don't breathe, then we don't have life or we don't have energy. And so breathe sets up the same kind of habits and attitudes, because I think that even if it's exciting and even if we want to, many people feel like they're drowning in social networks. And if we just stop for a second and remember the principles and the actions and habits of breathe, we can be more successful at sustaining ourselves, but also getting life from this work. So this is what breathe stands for, is defining what your base is, deciding how to manage the relationships in that base, extending the network connections and support, remaining in the mindset of always learning, planning for transparency, having a plan. So is my sound okay? I'm hearing some feedback on the sound. Is it okay? Okay, excellent. Planning for transparency.
Yeah.
Okay, let me try to, planning for transparency, having a plan for every network built on your base, and then embracing the unknown, because this space that we're in is so rapidly evolving and changing. Unknown is a constant. Change is a constant. So I thought I would spend a little bit of time taking you through each action of breathe, and then as you guys have questions, I'll be watching the chat. We can stop at any place. Everybody take a big breath right now, because breath not only calms us down, but it is what sustains us in life. So let's start with the base. And this is just based on my experience. This isn't, set in stone. I'm still working through this. So as you guys share your insights, this can change and adapt. And our goal today, my mantra, is we're smarter together. So when I share with people both new and already versed in this space, I think it's really important to understand what your base is. And I think in books there's magic of 3, so I've just devised a formula of 3s. What are your 3 core friends? And by friends it could mean a network, but your 3 core friends that provide your base, that no matter what, this is what you sustain. And that you're committed to this, that this is your foundation of people that you can go to, it's your priority. And the 3 tools that help you stay connected to your base. There's 5,000 tools, but there are 3 that are absolutely foundational, that if you said, I couldn't do this work, or I couldn't stay in this space without it, what are those 3 tools? For me, those 3 tools could be different depending on what your friends are and depending on what your purpose is. My 3 tools are my Google Reader, my RSS, and everything that I get from my Google Reader, my TweetDeck for managing my Twitter space, and Delicious for keeping track of not only my resources, but others. So I think everybody needs to decide what your base is and what your 3 tools are. And then, as Merlin Mann talked about, what are your actions every day that are going to support that base and keep that base grounded. Because being able to survive in the beginning and to sustain that is about discipline. It's about willpower, and it's about prioritization. And I think when new tools come along and new conversations come along, it's really, it really takes discipline not to go full force into something else, or to drop your base. And, like, for example, Twitter's a big base for me, and I'm listening about Plurk, and I'm open-minded, but I'm not dropping everything and running to that Plurk community. I'm going to just explore that. I know what my base is. So I'm just going to give you a second to ask a question or make a comment about the idea, do you know what your base is? Is it so solid it is unbreakable? Just going to wait for a second in the chat. This is the time when I say in a group, turn and talk.
That's a very good question. I don't know that I've thought about just 3 points, 3 things being my foundational as a base.
And I think you can grow that. Yes, Ghost Librarian saying time is a problem. And I think that if we can continue to make our base solid, and it could be more than 3, but I think it's a good starting point, because 3, forms a kind of foundation. So absolutely, their bases are people. So I'm going to go on to the next. So once I have my foundation, oops, I don't know why I keep going forward on this. Sorry about that, you guys.
Yeah, you don't want to hit the...
Oh my gosh, what am I doing? Okay, there we go.
You don't want to hit the one with the line at the end. Okay,
got it. All right, so the second aspect of breathe is relationships. And we say this a lot, but I really want us to keep this in mind, that our relationships online operate very much the same as our relationships offline. So if you think about the way that you handle interactions offline, if you look at your friends, there's going to be a body of friends that if you saw them in the shopping mall or you saw them at a restaurant, you would walk by and wave, you would acknowledge them. but you might not even go over and talk to them. You just acknowledge their presence. You have another tier of friends that if you actually did see them at a restaurant or in the mall, you might stop and actually pause for a minute, sit down at a table, and have a conversation with them. But it would be random. It would be brief because you just bumped into them. You have another tier where you actually call them and set up time for lunch. And you make time in your schedule to meet and actually sit down and have a conversation. And then there are those friends that you absolutely make time for every day and every week in your life. And that's how I look at my networks, is there different tiers of relationships. And so when I look at maybe LinkedIn or I look at Facebook, those would be, if I get something in my email that says, hey, here's a new friend, I might stop by and, wave to them, but not spend a lot of time there. I may have another interaction where I bump into them and I might put something on their wall on Facebook, or I might write a message back to LinkedIn, but it's not a planned thing. A more important network of relationships are my Twitter friends. And I might actually set something up. I might say, like today, I put a call out and said, you know what, join me, friends. Come have a drink with me today. We're having this great conversation. Come sit at the table with me. And then there are other friendships and networks that I actually plan for and have time. And I think about my online life in the same way I develop my offline relationships. That it isn't about the tool. It's not about Facebook or Twitter or LinkedIn or Ning. It's about what's the level and the depth of the interaction of that relationship. And I think that's easier for people to make connections to because we're around and surround ourselves with people all the time. So take a minute and just turn and talk for this idea about managing relationships. Any thoughts or questions? Yes, Steve, exactly. It's not immediacy, it's value. Another good point that differs from the inbox zero is that we're never going to delete, well maybe we might want to, but our friends and our relationships aren't going to go away. So if I miss a conversation, it's archived, it's linked, I can find it back on their blog, or I can go look at their name, or I can, have this posted. So I'm not losing out, I can still engage, and I'm not missing something. Where often, if I don't see somebody in person, I could miss a lot. And I think that's a very powerful thing about this space, unlike other spaces. All right, excellent. So now I'm going to go to the next, which is really important because I think that success in this space with relationships and sustainability isn't about the follow or the following, it's about the follow-up. So I want to say that again because it's really important. There's a difference between following and following up. And so following up or following through is all about extensions. It's all about your ability to extend your conversation, extend the reach, or extend the connection. Because the more we extend it, the richer our network becomes, the more solid our foundation becomes. And I think there's a lot of people that immediately follow somebody back, but it's about purposeful extensions. How are you going to, if you look at sort of a network, how are you going to make that network stronger? It's through the connection. So that's commenting on blogs, that's sharing links, it's sharing resources, it's introducing people. I do this all the time on Twitter. You've got to meet this person. You've got to meet this person. It's not just about following to get followers. It's about extending the conversation between your network, around your network, and past your network. And I think that's one of the things that once we have our base, we're more in a position to do that, is to reach beyond our base. And I do that, and I think that's the beauty of things like Twitter, is I know who my base is, and I know who I'm going to be talking to, for my core, who keeps me grounded. But I am constantly extending the questions or the conversation to people outside of my field. I have become so have such a wider perspective because of the marketers and the business and the writers and the poets and the mothers and the fathers and the people that I follow that are non-educators. They bring a much more powerful perspective. So are we extending? Every action should not only be a follow, it should be a follow-up. What's your follow-up? Thoughts or questions on that?
If anybody has a question or a comment that they'd like to share, if you'd raise your hand by clicking on the hand with the green arrow, you're welcome to take the microphone.
Absolutely. Jump in anytime. Heidi, that's a great, I mean, and think about what that does. Like she's saying, I follow scientists. We are now in a place where technology is an equalizer. I couldn't get an appointment with a secretary of a secretary of a secretary from some of the people I'm on first-name basis with on Twitter and some of these networks. It's amazing, absolutely amazing. And I'm not talking about Oprah. Yeah.
That's right. That's a good point about who you follow, and you just become, like you said, first-name basis.
Jackie, that's a great, exactly. When we get to, well, actually, we can talk about that now. On who to follow, Jackie brought a great question of, what's my criteria? And I think it goes back to, there's not a blanket formula for criteria. So the criteria has to match what your plan is, what your base is, what your relationship is. So when we talk about the H in Breathe, about having a plan, there's a plan for who I follow. So don't let me forget to bring that to the conversation. The A, this is no surprise. The A in Breathe, I mean, I think this is the life of everything, is that it is an always learning, all the time, anytime, non-negotiable mindset. And learning is a mindset. It's not an age. We are in a space that redefines what expertise is. And those who were once considered experts in one space can be obsolete because they have, in their own mind, believe they've reached a level of proficiency. Proficiency is a blind spot, because once you have the mindset that you are proficient or you're expert or you get it, you stop reaching out. You stop asking questions. You stop positioning yourself as a learner. And I've seen a lot of really smart people that I've admired for years and years operate on the mindset of expertise, and I watch them not being successful in new spaces with times changing. And I think that the successful of the future will not only be those who know how to learn, but those who believe they are learners always first. And I think that adds a whole new level to what Alvin Toffler's famous quote is. The successful of the future is the inability to learn, but you don't feel the need to learn if you feel you're expert or you feel you've gotten it. And there's a lot of people in every field, but I think a lot in education, who have reached proficiency in their own mind, but they're not putting it in the landscape of learning at this speed, at this level. So my absolute mantra is learning first. And anytime, any way, any level, from anyone, always, absolutely. Okay, that's my little soapbox about always learning. And then I think this carries a new kind of importancy, the idea of transparency. And I know this scares a lot of educators, especially when we look at transparency with kids and danger. But it's not only, success is not only about being transparent, it's about preparing for transparency. Let me tell you a little bit about what I mean. I look at my life as a learner, and I am the sum total of a lot of parts. I am, like you, play many roles. I'm a mom, I'm a wife, I'm a friend, I'm a teacher, I'm a blogger, I'm a Twitterer, I'm a staff developer, I'm a professor, I've got all these things. But each one of those parts, even though I might communicate in my roles differently, who I am never changes. I do not have a separate identity in any of those spaces. So even though some of my communication might be different depending on what my role is, my whole is transparent. Who I am, what I'm about, what I stand for is always about being vulnerable and honest and open and letting at any level of conversation who I am. And so I think that's really important when we look at preparing for transparency in the future for ourselves and our kids, is that it is not a matter of if you are going to be found, it's a matter of when you are found. We are findable now. And so when you are found, whether it's by a colleague or a parent or a student, who are they going to see? And if you prepare for transparency, they'll see what you intend them to see. They will see who you are. And so when you look at branding, which is really a business term, education needs to be about helping kids prepare for transparency because they will be their own brand. And who they are will matter way more than what they know. So there is no hiding in this space. Truth, my friend and partner Mike Sansoni always tells me truth bubbles up over time. And because we have our footprints all over the place, it doesn't take a lot of time for truth to bubble up about who you are. So I think that in our instruction and when we work with kids and we work with teachers, one of the teachers I had in my graduate class, said, I don't need to put my name. It doesn't matter. And I said, it does matter. There is no hiding anymore. If you don't show who you are, they're going to find you in a different way and make assumptions about you that you may or may not. Control that. We can control that. How many of you on the, if you can show me with your little check, have created your Google profile? Just show me with your little check. Google sent out maybe about a week ago. They were going to help us play more of a part in our own personal branding.
I don't think I've heard of a Google profile. What do you mean?
Okay, so I will. I'll get a link in there for you. Just give me a second. Oh, I'm going to go on. Actually, Mike's in the chat room. Mike, can you put a link in for Google profile? So when somebody types something in on Google, it's going to help you position. Oh, thanks, Jackie. Thank you. That is something this is your homework for tonight, and Transparency Preparation 101 is to look at, how do you want people to see you once you are found? So yes, Dirk, I'm going to put him to work always. All right, any questions or thoughts on transparency? And I'll also talk about transparency being a part of the plan.
And if you'd like to take the mic, please let us know.
Yeah, absolutely. Am I talking too fast? I have always been.
Not at all.
That. I just get so excited. Okay. All right. So the H in transparency is really the heart of all of this. The H in breathe is really about your plan. And plans are tricky because we want a perfect plan, and we want somebody to just put it in a 3-ring binder or tweet about it or blog about it, and then we'll just follow it. And it's not quite that simple because the plan is personalized and it must be customized. The key definer of success, I think, there was just a tweet that I sent a couple of days ago about 60% of Twitterers quit, and that doesn't surprise me at all because many people just jump in and again go back to they just start following or they just start doing it, but they don't have a plan. So a plan is a clearly defined objective about the habits and the actions that you're going to engage in for the relationship you're trying to nurture. I have a plan for my blog. I have a plan for my Twittering. I have a plan for my profile. I have a plan for managing, my incoming information, my outgoing information. So I'm going to share just a couple of those plans just to get an idea of how specific they are, because plans that are general typically fall apart. Plans that are specific, you're more likely to stick to and become habits. So I am not suggesting that this plan works for you. This is the plan that I created, and then I want you to, take it and put it toward your own base and your own relationship. So here's my Twitter plan. I call it actually, I'm going to have Mike, will you get the link to that? So my Twitter plan is a formula of how I manage my tweets, and it's on a 70, 20, 10 ratio. So 70% of my plan on Twitter is sharing and extending the conversation by sharing resources. 20% of my time on Twitter is making deliberate connections, responding, asking people to sit down at the table and carry the conversation further. And then 10% is a transparency, is, hi, how's your hat? I tweeted this morning, I didn't want to run, I was hoping that I could tweet and just burn calories. But, I think that tells people, that you're more than your work, that you're human, that you crave chocolate and you get sad at movies and you hate exercising and you love your family and all that stuff. This is my plan. It is not one that would work or would be applicable to other people. Teachers have a different means for Twitter. Marketers have something different. By DERF. So the key to having a plan is being able to go back to what is my base, what is my goal, what relationships do I need to put the most into, and how am I going to manage these tools. My blogging plan is a little bit different. So I guess my question to you with the check mark again is, when you look at your life online, do you have a defined plan for how you spend your time and what your habits and actions are? Can you articulate that to somebody else? So just let me see. It's not a test. You won't get a bad mark if you put an X down. Nice, Steve. Matt, I think that's a great point, is a lot of people's plans are totally random, and that's where it's easy to become, you look down at your clock and, 3 hours later you're still there and you haven't accomplished, because I think this is about sustainment. It's not about a one-time interaction. This is about sustainment. It really goes back to discipline and willpower and prioritization. And of course I break away from my plans, and I spend time sometimes on Twitter when I need to be doing other things, but overall I try really hard to stick to my plan. Steve, can you share a little insight into what your plan is?
Yeah, I definitely have things that I really like to do that really give me enjoyment, that are around organizational events and the like. And in order to do that, I have to have blocks of time. So I've had to kind of organize my social media in ways that allow me to block out 2 or 3 hours at a time without having that interruption, and then to be able to look at that social media for a given period of time before moving to the next block of sort of devoted task.
Excellent. Thanks, Steve. I'm going to just share, I think, some plans that could be adapted fairly easy, because Twitter and Nings or whatever your social network is so based on the kind of relationships you're trying to build. Those are a little bit harder to just take on. But my plan for RSS, again, comes from my friend and partner, Mike Sansoni. And he calls it, I don't even know if he has a fancy name for it, but when you look at RSS reading, whatever your feeder is, we call this skim, save, scan, and share. Skim, scan, save, and share. So the 4 S's. So that when I'm looking at my Google Reader, I'm not going to panic. I'm going to breathe, because sometimes I'll look at it and it'll be 1,000 feeds, and I'll get a little overwhelmed, and I'll stop myself and breathe and remember my first plan of action is, oh, I love that really serious stress relief, is to just skim it. So I'm skimming the headlines, which again goes back to, as writers, we need to be really cognizant that this is a new reading strategy, that readers aren't going to read, you know, a 5-page dissertation. We've got to write headlines really well. So this is a reading and a writing plan. But my reading plan is I'm skimming the headlines, and immediately I'm favoring ones I want to save. I'm not immediately reading them right then. I immediately save. And then as I go back and I look at my favors, because I can get through 1,000 feeds in 5 minutes, then I go back to my favorites, the ones that I have saved because of the headline, or maybe because I know the writer, or you know, because it's an intriguing topic. Then I go back and scan, which is deeper reading. It's focused reading. And I'll go back into the post or into the site and then read deeper. And then I think about what my follow-up is going to be, what my action is going to be. How am I going to save that knowledge, whether it be my bookmarkings, or how am I going to share that? And then I have folders that are available for scheduling tweets. If I use BrightKit to schedule people's posts, people's information or resources that I want to tweet so I can spread out my tweets. And then I have folders that I have for future blogs that I want to blog about what somebody else did, or I might just share it in a less formal way. So it's sort of like, do you remember the SQ3R when you were in school, when you were taught to read a textbook? This is what I teach students and teachers about reading feeds. So it's kind of like the Web 2.0 SQ3R, the 4 S's. And again, this might be something that you can take a piece of, but it's really easy to get overwhelmed with all the information being delivered to you. Trying to think of, oh, Jackie asked about what my plan was for deciding who to follow. So when I look at a blog, or I look at a Twitter page, I do what I call a thin slice. So it comes from just in 2 minutes. I want to thin slice the blog, and I want to look at, is the person transparent? What can immediately, is their face there? Is their real name there? Is their contact information there? And then I want to look at, if it's a blog, I want to look at their, sort of like their table of contents, the content of their blog. And I look at the topics, because that's an overarching sort of big idea on the blog. And I think about, are they writing consistently? Are they I know, Dirk, I'm talking to you about your faith. So, but I want to look at what their topics are, how consistent they publish, how willing they are to share what they publish, how open, and it doesn't take 10 minutes to do this. It's a quick, thin slice. On Twitter, I look at the first 2 pages of their Twitter stream. Do I see a lot of @ signs? What's their follower-following ratio? And that's not an exact, because, you know, initially, if they're following, like, you know, 500 people, I mean, they're following 500 people and only 2 are following them, that sends a red flag. Or vice versa. If they're 500 are following them and they're only following 2, then I sort of red flag goes up about their, you know, are they seeing themselves as such an expert they don't need to learn from someone else? So I kind of look at the ratio, but more importantly, I look at how are they extending or following up with the conversations coming to them. Do I see them sharing? Do I see a lot of @returns? Do I see, and I give them a pass in the beginning if they're just starting out. So obviously if it's a teacher or an educator just starting out and learning, then I almost typically follow them back. So again, it's about just being really purposeful, not going and trying to follow everyone that follows you. It's not about followership. It goes back to the nature and the strength of the relationship. And I think that's, again, going to be personal, but there's some tips that, you know, everybody can take away. The last thought is, I know there's a lot of words to describe social media, but I don't hear this word being talked about enough, and I think it's the word embrace. And I work with educators every day that are hesitant and that are worried, but I want them to understand that the most important 21st century skill, in my opinion, is adaptability. knowing that change is the only thing that we can count on, and that risk is trying to stay safe. Safe is risky in the 21st century. And so embracing means embrace the unknown, embrace ambiguity, embrace challenge. Every time you are challenged, you grow. And what they will very quickly and immediately find out is if you embrace this space, the network will embrace you back. You will never be the same once you feel that hug. I look in this, there's 69 people spending a Saturday morning in this conversation, right? This is an embrace to me. I have been hugged so greatly by the people that I have encountered. It is life-changing. We talk a lot about teachers always start with the fear. They always start the conversation with, what's the ROI? What's the ROI? I don't have time. All of this. Here's the ROI. This is how I'm talking about ROI. The risk of ignoring is so much greater than the risk of being overwhelmed, or the risk of being scared, or the risk of feeling inadequate. The risk of ignoring is absolutely dangerous for us and for our kids, because these are not going away. Technology is not going away. Change is not going to slow down. It's going to speed up. If we recognize that is consistency, that we will be information overwhelmed and change will happen fast, well, great. You can ignore it or you can embrace it. And when we look at what the risk is if we hesitate, and I mean hesitate, I don't mean just ignore, even hesitate, we are going to have so many opportunities pass by us that we are going to be unprepared to stand in front of kids. We are already, in many, many cases, unprepared to stand in front of kids and make the claim that we're preparing them to be successful in this world. So I think breathe is a really important thing to keep reminding us of, that this is a human endeavor with human capital, human power, human interactions. Human beings that don't breathe die. Human beings that don't breathe can also pass out. So we don't want that to happen. So if we just stop ourselves and we take in, breath is also what keeps us alive. And I think that I'm hoping that this will resonate with teachers and that they can relate to this and that they can both physically and mentally think about this. So I hope that Breathe gives you a chance to talk with your staff and your network and your teachers in a way that brings the humanness back to the forefront and not the technology to the forefront. So any thoughts or questions or ideas? I can talk a long time, so you've got to raise your hand and shut me up.
No, not at all. If any of you would like to make a comment or ask a question, please do so. And somebody just asked, can you talk about what the 3 actions were?
Oh, yes, absolutely. The 3 actions are about how your habit of time. So my 3 actions are different. So my 3 actions are first thing in the morning. It's almost like drinking my coffee. I open my feed reader. I have to discipline myself not to go to Twitter first, because then I get, I meet Dirk and I see all these people and I get off track. So my first action of business is always my feeder, is my skim, scan, save, and share, because it lays the ground for the conversations I'm going to have. Then my second action, of course, is Twitter. And being able to, and my actions could be different than yours, but mine are first my DMs, because those are the conversations of people talking directly to me that, want to sit down further or want to say something more intimate. And then I look at my @replies, because I want to make sure that I have extended or connected that conversation. So I'm really diligent about that. And then, my normal Twitter formula. And then my last action of the day is my blog. So I've made a commitment. I also have a formula for my blog on the flow of my blogging. Not that it's rote, but to make sure it stays varied and that I stay true to what I do. So the blog's the foundation of my work. And so then I look at, am I sticking to my blog promise to myself of making myself put in writing my thinking, because it makes me better in everything I do. Writing makes me better. So those are my 3 actions. I don't think it matters what your actions are as long as action, and that's what Merlin Mann's talking about, is that this whole idea of management is about action-based thinking and operation. So I picked 3 just because it's a doable number. And, you know, I go back to fairy tales and tradition. There's always been 3s. If things are in 3s, it's usually pretty lucky. It's been lucky for me, so.
Excellent. And
I'm trying to go
something else is, what can you do to develop your base or get your top 3?
Okay. I think the first thing in developing your base is really defining 2 things. Is defining who you are. I mean, I think that we have to decide who we are before we decide who we're going to bring in as the foundation of keeping us who we are. So what is your goal? What is your intention? What are you about? And we do that with our friends. So, you know, that's why they want to hang around us, because they know who we are. So once you decide who you are, then you want to find foundational people or networks around you that help you stay true to who you are but push you to be better than you are. And so I have that very close-knit network of people that are always influencing my thinking. And so I ask, and this is with teachers, but I start out with teachers trying to find 3 people, not 3 networks. So, I mean, if they went to Classroom 2.0, there's thousands of people, but again, you start getting back into that drowning scenario. So I teach them tools like, I mean, it could be Twitter for Teachers, or it could be Twello, which is what I'm really liking, the Twello search, TWELLO.com, so that they can sort of customize to maybe find another teacher like them, or someone, like if it's an English teacher, or if it's another staff developer or another literacy coach. And then if I'm working, you know, with that school or with those teachers, I can help meet with individual teachers to find out sort of their customizing who their base is going to be, helping them find out who they are and what they want to know. So I think we have to help each other do that. I think a big mistake people make is they try to make their base too big, and then it gets hard to keep up with. So 3, as you know, obviously grows and grows and grows. But if you have your core, I think it's easy to build once the foundation's there. So once they have that, and then they pick their 3 tools, and I think my 3 tools could be different, but I absolutely think RSS has to be one of the core tools, because that's how you're getting information about other people and resources and ideas. So it allows you to make a plan because you know what's out there. And then I think either Delicious or Twitter is very important too, because it helps you keep what I call found things found. It helps you keep the information that you're listening about or hearing in a place where you can access it, use it, and extend it. Just knowing about something isn't helpful if you can't get to it, access it, and use it. So again, these are just simple guidelines that can be adapted at so many levels, but I think it's a starting place. Did I answer that? Not sure.
I think you did. I definitely think you did.
Oh, good. A hand raised.
Steve,
So that was me. I'm kind of a ringer if I raise my hand. So one thing that really helped me was I felt this pressure to follow everybody. It was as though, okay, in order to be in the network, I've got to know what everybody's saying and everybody's doing. Well, the math very quickly just rules that out. So it really helped me to kind of come to this realization that my ability to bring value back into the network depends on my finding things I care about and I'm interested about, and they could be very different than someone else. So I focus on those, knowing that they may not be of interest to everybody else, but I can bring them in and they form a part of the larger whole.
I think, Steve, that is a very critical point, because it almost is a friend thing. If somebody comes and shakes your hand, you want to be nice, you know. We're nice people. So I've become more selfish, I guess. Liz Davis wrote about this the other day, the idea of selfish, using self first. If you don't preserve who you are and what you're about and yourself first, you cannot be of value to somebody else. And not to feel guilty about not following or not engaging with somebody who engages with you at another network, to stay true to what you believe, and with in mind always, what's the value that I can add to this space or to this place, and what tool is going to help me, you know, best do that. And it is not a popularity contest. It's not a numbers contest. It is, are you getting feedback about how your engagement level, yes, absolutely, Beth, you can't engage with everybody, about is your engagement level making you better, making you stronger, and more importantly, is it making other people better and stronger and more confident? Because I say this, you know, every day in my blog, my last line is, we are smarter together. But I mean that. I mean, this idea, education's danger is its silos. And it's silos not only physically, where we're in different places in different rooms and we don't get a plan, but our mental silos. When we position ourselves to be in a certain department, or, you know, I'm a math teacher, I'm a science teacher, and not look at us as a resource for one another, we can't do that. We cannot survive being silos.
And that's important, is the social aspect and being together and supporting one another and developing that support system.
Exactly.
Well, Angela, we thank you so much for joining us today, and we can continue on with this conversation. And this is such an important topic, managing and making, you know, this easier and kind of streamlining this thing, the social networks in our lives. And we thank you so much for joining us. Before we go on and complete the Illuminate survey, I'd like to share with you some things about coming up next week. TheFutureOfEducation.com is a meeting community that Steve Argadon has created in addition to Classroom2.0.com. And it's in conjunction with KnowledgeWorks Foundation and PBS. And next week there will be an interview series with Don Tapscott, who is the author of Grown Up Digital and the co-author of Wikinomics, on May 6th, Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern and 5 p.m. Pacific. He will be interviewing Don Tapscott. And on Thursday, May 7th, he'll also be interrupting the co-author of Disrupting Class, Michael Horn. And so those are going to be two wonderful, wonderful interviews that you're not going to want to miss next week. So be sure to stay tuned for those. And in conjunction with PBS, the Jean-Michel Cousteau Ocean Adventures presents Diving into the Digital World of Marine Science. And this is with PBS on May 4th, this coming Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern and 5 p.m. Pacific time. You're going to want to be sure to join in, and those will all be in Illuminate with Steve Argadon. That's going to be a fantastic interview series as well. So be sure to mark your calendars and leave that time available to join Steve. And we want to extend a very special thanks to Angela Maiers for joining us today, and Steve Argadon for filling in for Peggy today. And Steve is our founder of the Classroom2.0.com and the Classroom 2.0 Live series and thefutureofeducation.com. And we thank everybody who joined us today throughout the world. And we appreciate Illuminate for providing this forum, for allowing us to meet each week at the same time. And next week,
I just want to say thanks to everybody also.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. We're so glad that you joined us, and you know, everybody who came to do and support us. We're very grateful. And next week at the same time, we will be talking about NET 2009, how to prepare and to attend live and virtually with Steve Hargadon. So please join us. And later this afternoon or this weekend, we will be posting the recordings, the full video at the live.classroom20.com site. And let me go ahead and post the link to the survey and put the slide up for that. And you can access that by clicking on the link here, as well as the link from the chat window. And this link will take you to the survey, and the survey has questions that are for Illuminate as well as for Classroom 2.0, the live series here. So please fill out that survey and give us feedback on our sessions here in the Illuminate forum. We would greatly appreciate that. We revised the survey so that it's not just about Illuminate, but that it also gives feedback on the shows that we're producing here in Illuminate. So please take a moment to click on the link. Also, I believe that the link to the survey is in our Share Tabs link. If it's not, then it is in the you can click on it directly from the chat or in the slide right here. But regardless, please take a moment to fill that out, and we hope that you'll join us next week for NET 2009 live and virtually with Steve Hargadon. And we hope that you will have a great day. And thank you so much, Angela, and for everybody joining us today. Have a great afternoon or evening or morning, wherever you are. And thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks, everybody.